what I find with a lot of people is operations is just holding a million things at the same time and trying to juggle them at once. And that's where sort of people tend to not have the ability to scale or to move forward or to really have an effective operation.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Blitz Growth. Super excited to have an amazing guest for you here today. We're going to learn a ton about B2B, operations, coaching, training, and making your 2024 the best year yet. We love efficiency. So today we have Stanko here. Very interesting because he's in the content creation, B2B niche, focusing on the sexy side of operations, which is essential, but a lot of people kind of overlook this or don't really focus on it, which is a shame because it does make or break a lot of these businesses. And it will make a huge difference if you have a streamlined operation versus a clunky one. So today we're going to chat with Stanko about how he works with individuals and teams to achieve higher levels of performance and also their digital transformations. Stanko, nice to have you.
Thank you for having me, mate. Appreciate it. Really love your show, man. So really looking forward to having this chat today. So hopefully I can give some value back to your listeners.
You'll easily be able to, don't you worry. Starting out, for people who haven't kind of Googled you yet, just give us a quick 2-second reel of, how do you introduce yourself? What do you say you do? What do you say how do you say you can help people when you first meet them at maybe an event, dinner, hanging out, whatever it may be?
Funnily enough, when I meet people and they ask me what I do, and my first thing is I just say I just do stuff because it's so it's so broad and complex that sometimes I get caught up in trying to explain it like in a really sort of refined way. I guess essentially, I help people get shit done, and that comes down to sort of setting up an operation and running it essentially, and putting in the right pillars in place to make sure that the certain cogs are working. So yeah. That's it. That's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's more in-depth things to that, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's probably one of the best lines we've had, actually. How do you help people? I just help people get shit done.
Well, that's it. I think often we sort of complicate it and sort of really refine it. Like I help this, do that, by this. But essentially, at the end of the day, we just want to move the needle. Whatever that means in whatever industry it is. It's just essentially, like I said, get shit done. So
yeah. No, super interesting because, I know we're having a quick chat about this, but operations is in absolutely everything. You can't avoid operations. For those listening, operations is essentially how things work in your business. Is it a million different text messages going back and forth, or do you have a streamlined system in place to check the boxes, get stuff done? And Stanko, how do you kind of help brands do this, or where do you feel like you make the biggest impact when you're working with other brands or individuals stepping in and helping them with this process? What's usually broken and what are you usually fixing?
I think usually, look, any business, whether it's going good or bad, has an operation in place. That operation might be really clunky. It might be messy. It might be disjointed. I guess the key to a good operation is making sure that it's systematic. It's automated as much as possible. It's streamlined to the right people at the right touch points. There's certain stages or milestone stages that are hit at each point, and then that sort of triggers the next point and the next point. And what I find with a lot of people is operations is just holding a million things at the same time and trying to juggle them at once. And that's where sort of people tend to not have the ability to scale or to move forward or to really have an effective operation. Whereas the moment they sort of start to put some things down and take control of certain aspects and maybe delegate some tasks to other people, things start to run smoother and things start to operate a little bit better. And so there's a lot of that. And I think the awareness of knowing that an operation has certain elements to it is the first start of making a streamlined operation effective. So
got it. And then at the start, obviously everybody has to do everything themselves. It's very hard to obviously hire people day one or delegate day one when you're the only one doing everything. What are some key signs that you see when you're like, okay, this person should really be delegating this or hiring someone to do this? You've probably seen it a million times. What do you feel like the main indicators are that, someone should see when they're like, oh no, I should be delegating this or I should be doing, giving this to someone else to do?
I think, look, in reality, when someone starts a business, they're obviously going to be doing things on their own for a while, right? I think what happens is entrepreneurs who do start their own business tend to do everything at the same time. And there's a really sort of bad stigma around people thinking that their multitasking is actually effective and it's working. Whereas in reality, your brain can't focus on more than one task at once. So essentially, if you've got 5 tasks at once, you're actually doing none of them
Mm,
effectively because your brain is, it's sort of going one from the other. You sort of really have to learn to, and this is what I tell my clients a lot, is sort of just set their day and time block things. So if you've got 5 things that you have to do in your business, if you've
mm,
got 5 hats that you have to wear, time block it. Say from 9 till 10, you are operations. From 10 to 11, you're an accountant. From 11 to so on,
mm,
your sales. And I think if you really start to sit, walk in those shoes of that role with at a certain period, that sort of teaches you to really get things done a lot quicker. And essentially, that's really creating your own system. It's a
mm,
formal system that works. And yeah, so biggest thing from that is not to mix and mix roles
mhm.
within the task because, people fall over and I've seen it over and over again. So,
Yeah, I'm actually a big advocate of time blocking. I do a lot of it. And I also even put reoccurring events in my calendar. So it's like, every Monday from 11 till 12 is sales, or every Thursday from, 2 to 3 is HR or something, or like at least
yep.
following up. And then in the notes section, I also add what I'm supposed to be doing a lot of the time in that hour.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
because otherwise I'll get to it and be like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you spend 10, 20 minutes trying to figure out what you're doing. And then by the time you figure out what you're doing, time has passed. You know
Mm,
what I mean? And it's sort of that really starts to compound over time. And,
yeah.
if you look at the end result, it affects the bottom line. And
Mm,
that's your results, whether
mm,
that's money or clients or how many bums on seats or whatever you want to call it. It
mhm.
really does affect the result. So
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
about the method.
Yeah. Super interesting way to handle that. And then, so once you're doing that, what point do you feel like someone should be delegating it to someone else? So, you're eventually going to run out of hours in the day if you're wearing too
Mhm.
many hats, and the tasks or responsibilities for each time block is getting too big.
Mhm.
What's your advice to people who are kind of in that middle range of, they're getting some traction, they haven't really hired anybody yet.
No.
Maybe they're doing coaching or course creation, or they're running a software company or an e-commerce company. Um, what's some uh, what's some common things that you see in people who are holding on to a task for too long versus delegating it?
Yeah. So with that, so I'm a big believer in focusing on your strengths and sort of sticking to them.
Mm,
I think everyone has the ability to learn things. Example, you'll have a doctor or a dermal doctor,
hmm
injectable, does injectables, but they've got a social media account, and then they run their social media account. They sit there and in between clients, they'll write their copy, put up a post to do some tag and that kind of stuff. And you can tell that in that window of them doing that social media that their strength is actually being a dermal clinic,
mm,
being a dermal doctor, right?
hmm
So I think at that point you need to look at evaluate what are you doing, in terms of your time, how much time are you spending on certain tasks, and then start to sort of test it out, give it to someone, maybe do a trial, jump on Upwork or things like that, hire a consultant for really cheap that can help you sort of take the first step and take something off your plate so that you
mm,
can focus more on what it is that you actually do, the money making of the business. So
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of do remember the first time I hired someone else was just to help me because, bandwidth. I just couldn't get everything
Mhm.
done in a day. And so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's hire someone to do the lower level tasks that I'm doing,
Yeah.
or the tasks that are less impactful. Um, but yeah, definitely leaning into your strength, because that's what people are paying you for. They're paying you for the thing that you're an expert in.
Exactly.
Um,
So
and I do feel like software and technology has also helped out a lot. Like that's
mhm.
automated a lot of these kind of tasks that you would kind of maybe have delegated to some more
Mhm.
general kind of virtual assistant or admin at one point. I feel like software has made a big impact. How are you seeing companies, use software to help either streamline process and operations?
Mhm.
What tools or what software or what technology do you feel like is making the best improvements before and after once implemented?
I think software's come a long way, and I think especially in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of integration with AI or sort of certain sort of tools that sort of help a functioning operation sort of move along. And I think uh, what's happened is businesses have really started to implement that and integrate that into their everyday to day, like from a lead generation point of view to uh, to a, to a sales to a sales call, to a sales closure, and then
Mhm.
let's just say example production. If there's a manufacturing company, they'll automate the production lines, the timeline that it takes, the dispatch, and then the whole retention part post sale. There's I guess it's getting smarter and smarter to the point where we realistically don't really need humans to do as much as we needed to in the past. And I think
Scary.
what it really comes down to, yeah, what it's really coming down to, and it's going to come down to even more, is having the human there as the personal touch. The
Mm,
rest is done with software. So
mm,
yeah, I mean it's a really sort of broad topic, but I think if you don't have some sort of software and you're
mm,
doing everything on paper or on book, I think you're really behind. And it's something that you should really consider, whether it's from a small business owner just using Trello for an example and having all your accounts or customers in a certain board, or whether it's a big enterprise and implementing something like Salesforce. There's benefits
mm,
to it. So they're really dependent on the size of the operation and the
mm,
level that they want to go to.
mm.
So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that. And then for your 2024 predictions, how do you feel AI and software is going to impact the operation side of these? Like, obviously, operations is how all these businesses move and how everybody gets stuff done. What do you think 2024 holds for, I suppose, yeah, there's organizational software tools. Where do you think they're going? Do you think, you know, jobs are going to be replaced here? I know there's like
Mm,
assistants, virtual assistants, all that sort of stuff. What's your
mm.
prediction on 2024 on where kind of like software and SaaS for operations is going to go?
I think with AI, 2023 was a really big year on AI and sort of just taken a storm. But I think my prediction, and I guess this is just my opinion. I think 2024 the dust has or will settle a little bit more, and
Mm,
people will start to realize that AI isn't necessarily as useful in certain parts as it has been portrayed to be.
yeah.
Um, However, I do think that there's going to be a lot of implementation and testing around this year, seeing what works and what doesn't. And there will be a time where jobs will be made redundant, but new jobs will be born also from that, which is the exciting part. So
Mm,
I guess rather than looking at how many jobs are we going to lose, it's more about how many jobs can we make, to
mm,
grow the business even further. So there could be more sales that we hire, or
mm,
more, account managers on the road that we hire, as opposed to your people who are just sitting there closing leads, example. So
mm.
yeah, I think the future is bright. I think it's exciting. I think it is what we make it, and that's my prediction for 2024. So
Interesting. Yeah, I do feel like you got to embrace the technology and test it and find out ways to improve your output versus finding ways that it's going to replace you because everybody's replaceable or everybody will get replaced at some point in their life. It's the
yeah,
difference is who pivots and adopts that and then
yeah,
makes themselves more valuable or those who just accept that, hey, my job's been replaced.
yeah. And one thing you just said, it's sort of adapting to the AI is already making you more valuable than the person who doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's the key point, is just to be open to it, just to be open to change, open to learning new things, and sort of look at AI and all the little bits and pieces that are coming out and put it through a sifter. If whatever you sift through, whatever stays is obviously helpful for
Mm,
you, and whatever doesn't isn't. So
mm,
I think part of it is really being open to it and having the mindset of a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset is going to help you become more valuable as an employee, business
mm.
owner, or whatever you are. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, super interesting. Okay, let's switch gears over to coaching and agency side of things. So
Yeah.
there is this huge market of B2B, which doesn't necessarily get as much, coverage as maybe
Mhm.
B2C. So business to business, everybody, business to consumer. So B2B
Mhm.
side of things, you do a lot of the coaching, you have an agency that helps with operations. You know,
Mhm.
how are you really creating or acquiring customers for your coaching or your agency there? Are you using content? Are you, you know, what are you sort of doing there to create the interest that's big enough for them to say, hey, I want to either get coaching from you, or I want
Mhm.
to hire your system or your team to help me improve this problem?
So, so I come from an operational background, working for an aggregator for about 12 years and running
Mm,
their operations, sort of group operations and project management. Um, in the last 2 years, I've gone on my own and sort of started my agency in the same
congrats.
field, and just thank you, and just dealing with different people in different markets and different niches, rather than having the one market, so which was finance back then. Uh, the way that I find business to business, what you said, I think business to business ultimately is business to customer anyway, because at the end of the day, in the business, the person making the decision is a person, not
Mm,
essentially the business itself. So it's always business to individual, and I think working with individuals and you know helping them achieve operations is really sort of where everything's at the moment. And people do need help. People look for help. And the way that I've been gaining traction and getting a bit more clients, to be honest with you, for me, it's been a lot of it is word of mouth.
mm,
A lot of it has been sort of referral focused as well. I
mhm,
think results speak for themselves. And I think, sometimes we get caught up in social media and what people say online and all that kind of stuff. But I think ultimately it comes down to the nitty gritty work.
mm,
And so far, I have a small, team. I think it's been good because it's just referral based, and
mm,
that's sort of where I'm at the moment. So,
mm. Yeah, and I think everybody listening should think about, I know a lot of people decide to go like business to consumer, but everybody listening should think about like, hey, does my skill set apply to B2B, or as you were saying, like, business to individual, but really the majority being like, are you servicing a company or are you servicing an individual as
mm,
a whole? And then the other thing to think of is like, hey, should I be, there's like three prongs here. Should I be a coach and should I be doing one-to-one coaching with someone? Should I be creating a course and doing one-to-many, which is, low involvement? Or should
mm,
I be creating a team and making an agency? Because I do think all three can be very successful, very profitable.
mm,
It's very hard to do all three, I
mm,
think.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
how do you differentiate between people who you do coaching with or people who you bring on to kind of like the agency?
So it depends on the size of the project and the size of the problem, I guess.
Mm,
Really, a lot of times my clients that I work with really want someone in house to help them get into it, get into the work, and just sort of really paint the picture inside internally, see what can be pulled apart, what can't.
hmm
Sort of working in the business and just sort of spending a bit of time with them and their team, and just having an understanding of how everything works, and then building it from that way. But then on that side, you might have people who are just stuck at a certain point, and I think that's where coaching comes in. It's people who are stuck and want to work with someone who's either has done something like that in the past and can help them get there faster, or two, has the ability or the knowledge behind them to really scale them and push them forward, propel them to another level.
mm,
And yeah, I hope that answers that question. But
mm.
sort of
Yeah,
what I'm
no,
trying to
definitely. Definitely does. And I think, yeah, it is case to case basis. And then
Mhm,
it's clever that you sort of have both options for people. So you can take that coaching one on one client if, they already have a team or they're already maybe a
mhm,
little bit further along. I feel like
mhm,
usually the bigger companies want coaching and the small to medium size usually want done for you.
mhm.
So it's nice that you have those two options. Um, okay, coming into some common mistakes you see with operations. So when you're working with maybe smaller teams and they're kind of just getting started, or the tool, software, or business is just getting off the ground, what are some common mistakes people make in their operations setup?
Common mistakes is people. They have the wrong people in the wrong roles. That's number one. And I
Mm,
think that comes a lot of time, especially small businesses that grow to a
mhm,
certain point. They start obviously with a small group of people, and then that person grows with them. And then they sort of just start wearing different hats in the business where they're not necessarily either trained for it, skilled for it, or right for it, essentially. And
mhm,
what it does is it gets caught in a limbo where the business doesn't really move forward as progressively as it could be,
mhm,
purely due to the fact that the person running it doesn't have the skill set to move it forward. That's number one.
mhm,
Number two is having multiple people wearing multiple hats. I think, like I
mhm,
said earlier, you have multitask, but what a lot of people do is they give, let's say they've got 3, 4 staff, they'll give them 5, 6 different tasks or responsibilities to do. And
Hmm.
then, naturally people also get flustered and they don't perform very well, which again affects the end result of the bottom line of the business. So things that
Mm.
don't, the operation cog doesn't move as smoothly as it should.
Mm.
And back to what I said earlier, people in these situations, they sometimes do grow. Like the marketing might work, they get a whole bunch of leads, the customer growth is there, but then the operational side and the retention side falls apart because the internal
Mm.
isn't right. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is very hard to balance
yeah,
all of that flow, like
yeah,
all those deliverables, kind of like the acquisition, the maintenance, and then the LTV growth or lifetime value growth or retention.
yeah.
No, I agree with you. And then for you, like putting your words into practice, at what point did you think, oh, I should start hiring people to build out an agency? Because I think there are a lot of people in this field where they have a skill set or they can do something. People are hiring them for this skill and then they're getting stuck. Should I start an agency and grow out a team? Should I just keep taking on more and more work? Or should I get rid of my smaller customers and take on only the bigger ones? Um,
Mhm.
what was the tipping point for you when you were like, okay, I need to hire some people to help me out do this?
So from the start, again, I've done operations for a very long time, and I sort of had that mindset of learning how to delegate and give things to the right people so that I can focus on certain things.
Mm.
I've done that from the start, even from day one of the agency. I've you know delegated or outsourced certain tasks that take too much of my time, like
Hmm.
the web development, some of the SEO, the marketing for clients, or some of the design works and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff, I've got a team that I work through,
Hmm.
and they sort of help me move the needle with all these little tasks so that I can focus on the bigger picture and really sort of zooming out, bird's eye view. Right, this needs to go here, this needs to go there, and so on. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm big on that, and I think if I wasn't big on that, I wouldn't be as far into this as I am today. So
Mm. Yeah. Okay. So you're still following the kind of like the skill set model where it's like, do what you're good at, delegate the
yeah,
rest pretty much. Got it.
yeah,
And then how did you find with cash flow being like, okay, like it's always a chicken or the egg sort of situation with a lot of people. It's like, okay,
mhm,
do I pay to hire and outsource this
mhm,
to, but possibly lose money in the short term? Or
mhm,
do I kind of like do it myself, try and get by for as long as possible so I get some profit and then start paying for the extra help?
mhm.
What's your thought process on that one?
Look, I think everyone is in a different position, and I think the important thing is to understand that. And I think sometimes, yes, people there is a cash flow issue, or a stage where you might have to keep a bit of funds to retain them for later. And I think at that point,
Mm.
you really have to look at, okay, what do you need to get done? What are the top 5 things that you have to do? And what are the things that can wait for later? And sort of, I think once you've identified those things, then, you really sort of, I do a lot of pros and cons lists. If I
Mm.
do this, what I mean, what's the reason? What's the good reason? What's the bad reason for it? And I think that really helps me determine what decision I'm going to make for each point.
Mm.
Um, but cash flow, yeah, cash flow, it's a funny one. You have to spend money to make money, and that's the reality in today's age.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No,
and how
I,
much money that is up to, depending on everyone. So,
yeah, no, sometimes spending money to make money works out. Sometimes it doesn't. You got to
and I
keep
think that,
learning.
and I think the mindset to switch around that is rather than seeing it as an expense, especially in marketing, you got to start looking at it as an investment.
Mm.
What am I, you know, planting certain seeds that are going to come back to you later down the track, and
Got it.
that's the important part. And funnily enough, just on that, a lot of people, I would say 90% of people still think that marketing is an expense, not an investment. And that's where
Yeah.
a lot of people sort of are lagging and not sort of really getting on the train with everything. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's really important to start thinking about that for those that are listening. Is really start to put some money into some sort of marketing, and in particular SEO
Mm.
for your
Yeah.
online business. So,
Yeah. Well, I feel, yeah, all prongs require some effort and some money to get started. But yeah, definitely looking at the 1, 2, 5, and 10 year model will change the way that you spend your money for sure.
Yeah.
You look at more long-term strategies. Awesome. Stanko, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to leave with everybody knowing where they can find out more about you, about your coaching stuff, about your agency and how you help with operations, maybe some content or advice or value that you kind of give out to everybody. Let us know where we can find you.
I'm pretty much on most socials. So Stanko Peric, LinkedIn in particular, and also on Instagram. Just reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. Or,
Awesome.
if anyone needs any advice, I'm also there. So just shoot me a message.
Will do. I will chuck all those in the show notes. And everybody, hopefully you learned a little bit about operations, when to delegate, when not delegate. Let us know if you do have any questions from this episode. And Stanko, thank you so much for the time.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
See you, mate. Bye. Hey guys, we put a bunch of effort into making great content for this YouTube channel. So please hit subscribe, leave us a comment, hit like, and tell a few friends about it.